To the world, Felix and I were fated by the moon goddess, an Omega and her destined Alpha. Only I knew how much he despised me. At his Alpha ceremony, he humiliated me before the entire pack by choosing my half-sister, Bianca, over me. An Omega who plays with herbs? You'll never be worthy of me. In my past life, I begged him not to reject me. He didn't, but he made me suffer instead. My stepmother and Bianca framed me for poisoning the pack. He never defended me. He locked me in heat, then turned around and marked Bianca, like I was nothing. She wore his mark. I wore his shame. I was framed, cast out, and discarded. When he publicly crowned Bianca as his Luna, our bond shattered, and so did my wolf. It was then I realized he had never loved me. But now I'm back. Back on the day of his Alpha ceremony. In this life, I'd rather suffer than be his mate again. I wryly rejected you, Felix, as my mate. The entire pack fell into stunned silence, every pair of eyes turning to Felix, their future Alpha. Rejecting a fated mate, and doing so during an Alpha ceremony, was nothing short of blasphemy, a heresy against the moon goddess herself. Felix's smile froze mid-gesture, like frost cracking slowly across stone. He stared at me as if I'd completely lost my mind. You dare? He growled, his Alpha command crashing down on me like thunder splitting the sky. The weight of it slammed into my chest, a force that had once been enough to shatter me entirely. My knees trembled, barely holding. The bond between us howled in protest, tearing at my wolf from the inside out. I bit down hard, copper flooding my mouth, grounding me. I'm just setting you free, I said quietly, forcing a small, brittle smile. You and Bianca. I hope you'll be very happy together. His expression darkened in an instant, storm clouds gathering behind his eyes. Bianca's face drained of all color. Felix's gaze snapped back to me, sharp and dangerous. What the hell are you talking about? He barked, his voice rising. But I had already turned away. The scent of them, thick with betrayal, coiled in my gut, turning my stomach until I could taste the bitterness of nausea in my throat. Stop, he ordered, but I didn't. I couldn't. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I'm outside, waiting for you. I pushed open the heavy doors and stepped into the cool night air, not once looking back. Behind me, silence lingered, pierced only by shock, and the soundless roar of his rage. For the first time in a long, long while, I didn't care. I had returned to Silver Lake 3 days before Felix's Alpha ceremony. The very first thing I did was reach out quietly, through a trusted channel, to the Alpha of the Northern Pack, Aiden. The only one who had ever shown me real kindness in my previous life. In that past life, Felix had locked me away during my first heat, leaving me in isolation while he marked Bianca as his mate. When the bond between us finally shattered and my wolf withered, he abandoned me like a broken thing, left to die, forgotten and alone. Only one person came for me, Aiden, the Alpha of the North. But this time, I didn't wait to be rescued. I reached out first. I asked him to mark me. Yes, it was reckless. Yes, we had never even met in this life. But he agreed, without hesitation. I've been waiting for you, he said. I didn't understand what he meant at the time. Still don't. But I knew one thing for certain. He was my only chance. The only Alpha strong enough to stand against Silver Lake Pack. The only man who could truly free me from Felix. The night air bit at my skin as I stepped outside. A sleek black car idled at the curb. Aiden stood beside it, tall and still, his figure bathed in moonlight. His chestnut hair ruffled gently in the wind, his posture calm but alert. As soon as he saw me, he straightened and walked over. He smelled faintly of cedar, crisp, clean grounding. The scent brushed softly against the ragged edges of my spirit, and for a moment my wolf stirred, not in pain, not in fear, but in recognition. Are you all right? He asked, voice low and steady, deep and smooth like velvet wrapped in steel. I opened my mouth to answer, but before I could form the words, he reached out, not to grab, not to restrain, but simply to tuck a loose strand of hair behind my ear. When his fingers brushed my skin, a jolt of something electric and undeniable surged through me. Not pain, but pleasure, sharp and startling, deeper than instinct, more intense than any heat I'd ever experienced. My wolf whimpered softly in delight. This wasn't forced. This wasn't a bond imposed by fate. This was real. The moon goddess's true answer. Aiden stepped back, the corners of his mouth curving into a faint smile as he took in my flushed cheeks, my wide eyes. Looks like you're doing just fine, he murmured. My phone buzzed again. Riley, what the hell are you doing? You really think there's a better alpha out there than me? Who are you screwing out there, you disloyal little Omega? Bile rose in my throat. Without hesitation, I deleted every message. Aiden glanced at the screen, but said nothing. Instead, he reached over and quietly opened the car door. Let's go home, he said. And for the first time in my life, home didn't sound like a lie. The next day, I was summoned to the Silver Lake Alpha's estate by Felix's mother herself. I knew what it was, a setup, a trap. Just like all those times in my previous life. Every visit meant humiliation, scorn, and insults. Another reminder that in their eyes, I was nothing but a disgrace, an Omega, beneath them and unworthy. But this time, I walked in with my head high. My stepmother and Bianca were already there. Felix's mother, Luna Sarah, sat in the seat of power, eyes hard as stone. She didn't bother with pleasantries. Instead, she raised her hand, the silver inlaid ring on her finger catching the light. Then pain struck, searing and soul-deep, piercing straight into my wolf. I staggered, gripping the edge of a chair to stay upright. So you do feel pain, she said slowly, voice colder than ice. I thought rejecting your alpha meant you weren't afraid of anything anymore. She slammed her hand against the table. You've made Felix a joke. You've disgraced the Silver Lake Pack. I rejected someone who disrespected me. I replied in my voice calm. Insolent girl, she barked. Felix is the future alpha. Everything he does is right. And you, just an unmarked, low-blooded Omega, dare to question him. My stepmother chimed in, her voice sweet and poisonous. Exactly. Riley, you're being ridiculous. Don't be so ungrateful. Felix and Bianca grew up together. Of course they're close, you're just overreacting. Bianca lowered her eyes like the perfect little martyr. Big sister, I'm sorry, it's all my fault. I shouldn't have gotten so close to Felix. Please don't be mad at him. Blame me instead. What a performance, exactly like last time. I looked at the three of them and felt only one thing, exhaustion. Wasting time on these shallow, self-absorbed people was beneath me now. Are you done? I asked, my voice calm but sharp. They froze. Good, I said and turned to leave. As I reached the stairs, Felix appeared. He stormed down the steps, grabbing my wrist. His alpha aura surged, trying to suppress me. Riley, you owe Bianca an apology, he barked, furious. Still clinging to the illusion that he had power over me. I yanked my arm away in disgust. Let go. You're hurting me. Oh, now you feel pain? He shouted. Did you think about my pain when you humiliated me in front of the entire pack? You're nothing but a filthy Omega. You don't deserve to be my Luna. His eyes swept over the warriors Aiden had stationed by the door to protect me, filled with jealousy and madness. You think a new master can save you? Think twice. You're nothing but discarded trash. Even if another wolf picks you up, you'll still belong in the garbage heap. He stepped closer, his voice dropping into a snarl. I should skin you alive and lay your pelt at Bianca's feet. I turned away as Aiden's warriors stepped forward, their formidable presence alone enough to make the Silver Lake guards recoil. Behind me, I heard Felix scream in rage and the sound of something shattering, but I didn't look back. Back at my little cabin, I packed in silence. There was nothing left here for me now. Aiden had promised to send a car to take me to Westwood, the edge of the northern frontier. Soon, I'd leave for Westwood, where our pack betrothal ceremony would be held. I wrapped my herbal remedies with care, tucking my handwritten notes between layers of cloth. They were the only legacy I'd built in that life. My phone rang with an unknown number flashing on the screen. I hesitated for a moment before picking up, only to hear Felix's voice on the other end. His voice was low, ragged, but that arrogance, it was still there, clinging like rot. Riley, enough. Stop this nonsense. I said. Nothing. The only sound was his breathing, shallow and angry. You think that Northern Alpha can protect you forever? A pause. Then venom. I'll mark you forcefully, on the next full moon. Right in front of him. In front of the whole damn world. I'll make sure everyone sees how you beg beneath me. Your wolf will scream in agony from the shame. And your new alpha? He'll just have to watch. I'll burn your precious herb notes. Rip out your claws. Crush what's left of your pride. You want a new life? He growled. I'll drag you back into the ashes. Now come back. We could pretend none of this happened. I listened in silence as he ranted, then simply smiled and, without a word, tossed the phone straight into the fire. The plastic hissed, the metal popped, and his voice dissolved into smoke. Outside, a pair of headlights cut through the trees as a sleek and black car pulled into view. Aiden stepped out, tall and calm beneath the moonlight. He handed me a cup of warm water as I slid into the seat beside him. Silver Lake has sealed all exits, he said quietly. Felix used his authority as alpha to command the entire pack to hunt you down. I stilled. The charges, he added. Treason and the attempted poisoning of Luna Sarah. I gripped the cup tighter. Outside, the forest blurred past us, dark and endless. This wasn't the beginning of peace. It was the start of war. The journey to Westwood Pack was long, but I wasn't tried at all. Outside the car window, the scenery kept shifting, like my life, shedding layer after layer. Westwood Pack lay deep within a vast and emerald forest. The air here felt different, lighter, almost alive, as if even the wind had been waiting to greet me. The car came to a stop in front of a grand wooden lodge, its windows glowing with warm light that spilled outward, gently pushing back the shadows. Standing at the entrance was a woman with soft brown curls and a kind and open smile, Luna Elena, Aiden's mother. She was nothing like Sarah. The moment I stepped out, she wrapped me in an embrace that was neither formal nor forced, but warm, steady, and maternal. "Welcome, child," she said, her voice wrapping around me like a blanket. "We've waited a long time for you." I froze. Aside from my own mother, no one had ever hugged me like that. "Thank you," I whispered, my throat tight. She smiled gently. "Call me Elena." Then she took my hand and led me inside. The lodge was full of Westwood's core members. I expected the usual stares, pity, judgment, disdain. Instead, I found only quiet curiosity, kindness, and respect. Elena introduced me with quiet pride. "This is Riley, Aiden's mate, our future Luna." No one questioned her. No one sneered at my omega scent. Later, a housekeeper showed me to my room. It was large, warm, and beautiful, a sun-drenched space filled with thoughtful touches. On the balcony, rare herbs lined a long planter, each one carefully tended, all prepared by Alpha Aiden, the housekeeper said with a smile. "He thought you might like them." My chest tightened. "Aiden, how did you know?" I stepped out, letting the wind run its fingers through my hair, inhaling the subtle fragrance of rosemary and silverleaf. Something deep within me trembled, quiet and tender. A part of me I thought had long since died stirred to life again, but the moment was broken by a sudden noise. Raised voices drifted up from downstairs. I walked to the window and froze. Felix and Bianca were standing at the gate, as if they still belonged here. My stomach twisted. Like rotting and relentless flies that refused to die, they were back. I went downstairs. Felix and Bianca stood at the gate, blocked by two Westwood warriors. "You're not welcome here," one of them said coolly. The moment Felix spotted me, he pointed and shouted, "Riley, you really ran off with another wolf? You shameless little omega." Bianca stood beside him, dabbing at invisible tears. "Sister, how could you do this to Felix?" she whimpered. "He loved you, and you just left him for some stranger." "Loved me?" I let out a sharp laugh. "You mean the way he loved my half-sister? That kind of love? That's not true." Bianca shrieked. "We're innocent." "Innocent?" I tilted my head, ice cold. "Then what are you doing here, staging another round of the we're just like siblings act?" Felix's face turned red with rage. "Enough," he barked. "Come back now, Riley. Don't make me use force." He reached out to grab me, but before he could touch me, a figure stepped between us. "Elena." Her voice was calm, but rang with steel. "Young man, this is Westwood. Not a place for tantrums." Felix bristled. I'm Silver Lake's future alpha. You dare lay a hand on me? Then a low, steady, and icy voice cut through the tension. Throw them out. It was Aiden. He stood beside me, dressed in black, casual and effortless, yet his alpha presence swept through the room like a storm front. Even standing still, he made Felix and Bianca shrink back. Two warriors stepped forward without hesitation, grabbing Felix by both arms. Let go of me, he shouted. Do you know who I am? My father is Alpha Robert. Aiden didn't even blink. Take the girl too, he added, his voice like a blade. Bianca turned ghost white. Felix, help me, she cried, clutching at him, but no one moved. Like trash being taken out, they were dragged away and tossed beyond the Westwood gates. Silence fell, bringing with it a rare and welcome peace. Aiden turned to me, then reached for my hand. His palm was warm and steady, his fingers wrapping around mine like a silent promise. A soft pulse passed between us, the unmistakable thrum of a true mate bond. I looked up into his dark eyes and saw no doubt, no fear, only strength, and something I'd never had before, a future. Life in Westwood Pack was calm and fulfilling. Aiden built me a private herbarium, a sanctuary filled with every tool and rare herb I could ever need. For the first time, I lived in peace, in purpose. Aiden treated me with quiet devotion, no grand speeches and no demands, just steady presence. He'd drop by each day, sometimes with rare roots from deep in the forest, sometimes with honeycomb still warm from a hive. He never forced closeness, but somehow, he was always there when I needed him most. And slowly, the bond between us took root, not fragile and forced, like with Felix, where one lie had shattered everything. With Aiden, it was different. It was like a tree, its roots entwined with mine, steady, strong and unshakable. For the first time in my life, I felt safe and loved. But just as I began to believe I'd left my past behind, he returned. Felix, like a ghost clinging to the last scraps of power. I saw him the moment I opened the door to my herb cottage, standing there with hollow-eyed, bloodshot, unshaven and haunted. Riley. He stepped forward and grabbed my arm. Why haven't you answered my calls? My texts? Because I didn't want to, I said, voice like ice. His composure cracked. You've made me a laughingstock, he growled. You dared to reject me. You dared to leave with another alpha. No, I said calmly. I finally saw your true face. That's all. His anger surged. You've ruined me. Even my mother's fallen ill. Not my concern. I yanked my arm from his grip. That's between you and your conscience, if you still have one. His face twisted. You think that Northern Alpha really wants you? You're just a pawn and an Omega. He'll never see you as equal. I stared at him, not with fear, not with pain, but with pure and unfiltered disgust. You thought I'd come back? I said, voice low and steady. That if you showed up and barked loud enough, I'd kneel again? I raised my hand, and with a sharp crack, the slap echoed through the trees. Felix stumbled back, clutching his cheek. Shock and disbelief warred on his face as he stared at me, as if he didn't recognize the person standing before him. Good. Because I wasn't the same Omega he once broke and I never would be again. One afternoon, I received a letter from Silver Lake, sent by an old classmate I hadn't heard from in years. Inside, she wrote about Felix and Bianca, who had just announced their engagement in grand fashion. The entire pack was buzzing with excitement. There'd even been a lavish ceremony. Tucked between the pages were glossy photographs. Felix grinning smugly as he held Bianca close, and Bianca beaming in a designer gown, draped in jewels and false joy. Then came the words. Riley, are you all right? Everyone's talking. Felix and Bianca flaunt their love daily. They say you're ungrateful, that you're just a lowly Omega, who turned down your fated mate, that you never deserved him. I stared at the letter in silence. Once, those words would have shattered me. Now they felt weightless. I fed the letter and photos to the fire, watched the flames curl around Felix's perfect smile, watched it all burn. At the end she'd written, We're organizing a class reunion soon. You should come. Everyone would love to see you. I smiled. I had no interest in returning to a place where I was once buried alive in silence. Let Silver Lake Pack gossip. Let them believe whatever made them feel better. I had no intention of going back, not as their scapegoat, and never as their victim. A few days later, that same classmate messaged me again. Riley, aren't you even a little curious? Don't you want to show them you're doing better now? There was a taunting edge to her words, as if my silence made me weak. I hesitated. Just then Aiden walked into my herb lab. He saw the phone in my hand, the tightness on my face. What's wrong? He asked gently. I handed him the screen, and he read the messages in silence, his brow furrowing. Do you want to go? He asked. I shook my head. No, I don't want to see them again. Then don't, he said simply. You don't owe anyone anything. His voice was firm, quiet and grounding like always. I set the phone aside and returned to my work, but the messages kept coming. Each message was more manipulative than the last, calling me a coward, accusing me of being too afraid to face the truth, and insisting that I'd never truly moved on. I didn't feel anger, only a deep, final disgust. I saw it clearly now. She'd never been a real friend. Just another voice in a pack that thrived on hierarchy and cruelty, so I blocked her and erased her number. I cut the last fraying thread between me and Silver Lake Pack. I didn't need their reunions or their approval or their noise. I had my work. I had peace. And I had Aiden. That was more than enough. Cutting ties with Silver Lake Pack brought silence, and with it, a beautiful and uninterrupted calm. I buried myself in herbal research. Aiden visited daily, sometimes helping grind roots, sometimes just sitting nearby. He never hovered, but when I was deep in concentration, he'd quietly place a glass of water or a snack beside me. I felt peaceful. Felix, his name, his voice, his face, began to blur into the background. I no longer winced at the memory. I felt grateful instead. Grateful for the girl who found the courage to reject him. Grateful for the man who stood beside her now. One afternoon in the Pack library, I got a call from an unknown number. I answered before thinking. Riley, a familiar voice said, low worn. Are you still mad at me? Felix. My hand tightened around the phone. We're done. He sighed, shifting to excuses. He said the engagement meant nothing, just a family arrangement, and he regretted everything. He even promised there'd be no more Bianca. I laughed, bitter and cold. You forgot you're engaged to her. It's just for show, he said quickly. My heart's still with you. And then, a faint and syrupy voice in the background. Felix, who are you talking to? Bianca. His voice turned urgent and panicked. He tried to hush her, fumbled over more hollow words. I didn't wait for the rest. I hung up. I blocked the number, and smiled to myself. Some things never change, but I did. I didn't tell Aiden because I didn't want to burden him. I thought Felix would eventually give up, while I was wrong. A few days later, I spotted them, Felix and Bianca, in the Westwood market. Their flashy clothes stood out awkwardly among the simple, earthy tones of the villagers. They looked like peacocks in a henhouse. Bianca rushed up the moment she saw me, her voice sugary and fake. Sister, Felix misses you so much. She shoved her phone at me, screens filled with photos of jewelry, perfume, expensive gifts supposedly from Felix. I didn't flinch. I looked at her, calm and bored. Got nothing better to do? I asked. Instead of flaunting, maybe learn a skill or two. Her smile cracked. Felix stepped forward, starting some excuse, but I'd stopped listening before he opened his mouth. I turned and walked away. Let them buzz. I no longer cared. They were just noise now, annoying yes but completely powerless. Back in the herb room. I wasn't shaken by their presence, I was exhausted by their persistence. I picked up my phone to message Aiden, and then it came an MMS from an unknown number. I opened it. It was a photo, Felix and Bianca naked in bed, tangled together like animals. Below it was Bianca's message. Sister, Felix only loves me now. My stomach lurched. I dropped the phone like it burned. As I turned to steady myself, the door slammed open. Felix. He charged in, grabbing my arms. Riley, let me explain. I stared at him. Cold and sharp. Explain what? How you posed for photos mid-thrust while she texted me. He paled. You saw it? Yes. I yanked my arm free. and it made me sick. As if to prove it, I staggered back and doubled over, retching. Felix lurched toward me in panic, his movements frantic and unsteady. That's when the door opened again, and Aiden stepped in. The moment he saw Felix, his eyes turned icy, and an intense alpha aura radiated from him, filling every corner of the room. Felix was instantly overwhelmed, his body frozen in place. "Get out," Aiden said, his voice firm, commanding, leaving no room for argument. Terrified, Felix scrambled away, practically crawling out. Aiden walked over to me and held me gently. "Are you okay?" he asked gently. "I'm fine," I whispered, shaking my head. "I just feel a little sick." I looked up at him. "Aiden, I haven't told you about Felix, about the past, about everything." And so I did. I told him everything. The toxic bond, the betrayal, the harassment, and the photos. He listened in silence, then he wrapped me in a steady, grounding embrace. "Riley," he murmured, "I don't care about your past. I care about you and the life we'll build together. I love you." My vision blurred. Tears I didn't know I'd been holding back spilled over. For the first time in my life, someone didn't flinch at my broken pieces. He held them, and he held me with patience and love. And I knew deep in my bones, this was fate. And I had finally found home. Soon after, Aiden's parents arrived in Westwood Pack to help us host a proper engagement ceremony. Though Aiden and I had already sworn before the moon goddess, they wanted the world to know I was his chosen mate, formally, proudly. Preparations unfolded like a dream. Elena helped me pick my dress, oversaw every detail with care. She treated me not as an outsider, but as a daughter. In her quiet attentiveness, I felt a kind of warmth I'd never known growing up, a mother's warmth that was unspoken, but real. For once, I allowed myself to enjoy it. But of course Felix didn't disappear. He kept harassing me like a madman. Message after message flooded my phone. "Riley, come back. I was wrong. I love you. You belong with me. That wolf is using you. Only I will ever love you." At first, his messages were pathetic, then desperate, and finally cruel. I didn't reply and didn't even read beyond the first few lines. I blocked number after number until they became nothing more than noise lost in the void. I chose peace instead, pouring my attention into the people who truly cared. Elena with her gentle presence and Aiden, whose steady hand held mine. He never pried or pushed. He simply stood beside me, unshakable. His silence spoke what words could not. "You're safe now." Let him scream into the wind. So I did. Felix's voice gradually faded away, and all that remained was joy. On the day of our engagement, Westwood glowed warmly. Lanterns lit every path, casting a soft light over the wooden beams and forest leaves. The ceremony was simple, but full of heart. With every member of the pack came, offering smiles, blessings, and quiet joy. Elena and Alpha Liam stood nearby, glowing with pride. For the first time in my life, I felt chosen, not as someone's backup, but as someone's future. Then my phone buzzed. It was another classmate sending me a screenshot from Felix's social media. He had just announced his mating ceremony to Bianca, posing in a staged, overly polished photo. "My Luna. My one true love." The words hit like a mockery. I felt a flicker of anger, not heartbreak, not longing, just the need to set the record straight. I turned to Aiden. "Let's take a photo," I said, sliding my phone from my pocket. He smiled, effortlessly pulling me into his arms. One click. One perfect moment, real, not posed. I posted it with a single caption. "My Alpha. My one true love." Then without hesitation, I posted the screenshots of Felix's harassment, the messages, the threats, the manipulation. Everything he tried to bury, I brought into the light. Within minutes, my feed exploded as comments poured in, filled first with shocks and then with the truth finally having its voice. I looked up at Aiden and his gaze never wavered. That day, I didn't just claim my mate. I reclaimed myself. That night, Aiden and I returned to the cabin, tired but content. Felix stood at the door with bloodshot eyes, shaking hands, and rage barely contained. "Riley," he snarled, "how could you do this to me? You humiliated me." I met his gaze, unflinching. I didn't humiliate you, I said coldly. I told the truth. The truth? You think I'd believe you? You and that wolf, you're both liars, he shouted, charging toward me. Aiden instantly stepped in front of me, his powerful alpha aura bursting forth. Felix was once again crushed under the pressure, gasping for air. Get out of my way, he growled, struggling to break free. You really think I'd let you control me again? I stared at him coldly. I stepped around Aiden and walked straight up to Felix, then I raised my hand and slapped him hard across the face. That slap is for the girl I was in my past life, I said. You disgust me. Felix was stunned and he clutched his cheek, trembling. Riley, don't do this. I was wrong. I know I was wrong, he stammered, suddenly dropping to his knees and grabbing my legs. I love you. I can't live without you. Please come back to me. He sobbed pitifully, a complete mess. I looked down at him with no sympathy, only disgust. Felix, I said slowly, clearly, we've been over for a long time. You and Bianca, you deserve each other. I, Riley, am now officially engaged to Aiden, Alpha of Westwood. Felix froze. The words hit him harder than any slap. For the first time he understood. I was no longer his. I never would be again. A few days later, Aiden and I slipped away for a short holiday, just the two of us, on a sun-drenched island where the sea breeze danced through our hair, and the warm, golden sand stretched endlessly beneath our bare feet. With each wave that lapped gently at the shore, I felt a little more of my past dissolve into the ocean, washed away like footprints in the tide. The memories that once haunted me began to fade, softened by salt and sun. For the first time in what felt like forever, I felt completely free, unbound by pain, unburdened by expectation. I was simply me. When we returned home, a letter was waiting for me, tucked neatly among the day's mail. It came from an old acquaintance in Silver Lake, someone I hadn't heard from in years, but who clearly still had an ear close to the pack's gossip. The letter was handwritten in elegant cursive, and inside she wrote, Felix hadn't been home in ages and told the elders he wanted to sever the mate bond. But during the class reunion, Bianca showed up waving a pregnancy test, swearing it belonged to Felix. He denied it. She screamed betrayal. Then came accusations of miscarriage, claims of violence and abandonment. The entire pack was scandalized. To contain the damage, Felix had no choice but to return and play the role of the dutiful mate. Any thought of breaking the bond was pushed aside. And at the very bottom she added, with unmistakable satisfaction, Riley, you were so wise to walk away. He's become a public joke. I read it all with a dry sort of amusement. No pain, no anger, just a calm, ironic satisfaction. They had built their life on deception, on cruelty, on hollow promises. And now, that life was crumbling, loudly, publicly and perfectly, without me. With a small shake of my head, I tossed the letter into the bin and moved on. That evening, Aiden and I went for a walk through the woods, our fingers loosely intertwined, the quiet forest wrapping around us like a blanket. The leaves whispered softly above, rustling in the golden light of a setting sun. His hand, warm and steady in mine, grounded me with every step. And in that quiet moment, surrounded by the hush of nature and the soft pulse of something deeper blooming between us, I knew I had found peace. Not the fragile illusion that collapses when tested, but something solid, enduring, well-earned, and truly mine. The days began to fall into a gentle rhythm, each one filled with study, herbal research, long walks, and quiet joy. Aiden was my constant presence, not overwhelming or intrusive, but always there when it mattered. Every week without fail, he'd show up with warm meals he'd cooked himself, little snacks I didn't even realize I'd been craving, and a kind of care that was almost too gentle to believe. He never hovered, never demanded, but somehow always knew what I needed: help with translations, silent company during my long hours at the herbarium, or a firm but soothing shoulder massage when I'd hunched over my desk for too long. He was thoughtful and steady, the calm center of every season I moved through. Then came my birthday. That morning he blindfolded me and led me carefully through a winding trail behind the herbarium, his hands guiding me with quiet confidence. When he finally removed the blindfold, I gasped. The clearing had been transformed into a hidden garden, overflowing with flowers in every shade I loved, lavenders, blush pinks, soft blues, and deep reds. It was like stepping into an enchanted dream. In the center of it all sat a delicate cake, glowing with 18 flickering candles. "Happy birthday, Riley," Aiden said, his voice soft, his eyes shining with warmth and something even deeper. I turned to him, stunned. "How did you know I loved these flowers?" His smile was quiet but certain. "I always knew," he said. The next day, curiosity finally got the better of me. Teasing, I asked, "Aiden, have you secretly been in love with me for a long time?" He only laughed and changed the subject, deflecting with the ease of someone who had held a secret close for years. Later, I went to Elena, hoping for answers. She chuckled warmly as if I'd asked something obvious. "You and Aiden?" she said. "Of course he knew. You used to visit all the time when you were little. You two were practically inseparable." My eyes widened in disbelief. She continued, smiling at the memory. "When you were 7, you once marched into the garden and declared, 'When I grow up, I'll be Aiden's mate.'" My cheeks flamed. "I said that." Elena nodded. "You had a terrible fever not long after. Some of your childhood memories faded. After that." That night, as I lay in bed, bits of something long forgotten began to stir. A little boy's laughter, the soft fur of a wolf pup curled at my feet. A high and sweet voice echoed like a dream. "Riley, will you be my mate when you grow up?" My heart clenched around the memory. Maybe it hadn't just been fate that brought us together in this life. Maybe it was something deeper, something planted long ago in innocence and nurtured by kindness, now finally blooming into love. Something real. Something ours. Months later, I officially became Westwood's first Omega doctor. My herbal research flourished, quietly but steadily, like wildflowers blooming in the margins of a long-forgotten path. Life around me settled into a rhythm, peaceful, fulfilling, and entirely mine. One warm afternoon, as I stood in the lab sorting freshly gathered herbs, my phone rang. The voice on the other end belonged to an old classmate, breathless with excitement. "Riley, you won't believe it, Felix is in prison." I froze. "Prison?" I echoed, setting down a sprig of rosemary. "Yes. Apparently, Bianca used the pregnancy to control him. They argued constantly, and during one of their fights, he called her a slut and pushed her. She miscarried and bled out before anyone could get to her in time." There was a pause, thick with unspoken emotion. "He's been convicted of manslaughter." I closed my eyes. "And his family?" I asked quietly. "No one's supporting him. Alpha Robert called him a disgrace and stripped him of his name. He's a rogue now." I set the phone down, heart oddly still, feeling no anger or joy, just a quiet ache. Some wounds cut too deep for vengeance to matter. Just then, Aiden entered, the familiar scent of forest clinging to him, and smiled the moment he saw me. "How are you doing?" he asked. I looked up at him. "I just found out Felix is in prison." Aiden didn't flinch. He stepped forward and wrapped me in his arms. "It's over," he murmured, voice warm and grounding. "That world can't touch you anymore. You're mine now." And I was wrapped in his strength. I finally felt it, the end of one life and the beginning of another. This new life was not defined by the past, but by the love I had chosen. I was no longer the discarded Omega. I was Westwood's doctor, a mate, a wolf reborn. And this was my true home. Aiden's epilogue. I am Aiden, heir to the Northern Pack, born of rare wolf blood. From the moment I opened my eyes to this world, I was different. I could glimpse echoes of the past and flashes of the future. I first saw Riley as a toddler, an Omega pup with a runny nose, looking up at me with wide eyes and declaring, "Yes, Aiden, when I grow up, I'll be your mate." In that moment, my heart tethered to hers. I didn't know how or when, but I knew she was my mate, my future. I remember the day she fell into the freezing lake. She was 7. I was 9. I jumped in after her, nearly dying to pull her back. When I woke in the healer's den, bruised and barely breathing, I asked for her, but she didn't remember me. A high fever had erased our shared childhood. And yet I smiled through the pain, and vowed to wait, to watch over her, until the day she found her way back. But she didn't. Instead, I watched from afar as she fell for Felix, a privileged, arrogant alpha who never deserved her. I saw her bright spirit dim, her wolf grow weaker, her eyes lose their light. I felt her pain as if it were my own. And on the day she lay cold and broken in the Silver Lake Hall, I held her lifeless body and whispered, "If I had the chance, I would never let this happen again." And somehow the moon goddess heard me. When I opened my eyes, time had turned back, 3 days before her mating ceremony. She came to me then barely knew me, just a strange alpha with urgent eyes. Yet despite that, she still asked me to mark her. I said yes and my heart soared. And on the day, she stood tall and rejected Felix. I saw the fire in her, the one I'd always believed in. It hit me then, she too had returned. 2 souls reborn, 2 wolves rewriting fate. This time, I will never lose her. This time, I will shield her from every storm. And love her, with every breath, for every lifetime. Aiden.